Do you think Francis Ngannou's desire to fight Tyson Fury is just one of those fighters' wishes that never get to fruition, which everyone later forgets about? Then maybe you are wrong. The UFC heavyweight champion says he won't re-sign his deal with UFC if it's not part of the contract. Unbelievable, right? Watch this video to find out more about it, and you won't want to miss out on the other trending events talked about in this video. Stay tuned. Francis Ngannou won't re-sign a deal with UFC. The Tyson Fury fight has to be part of the discussion, he says. Francis Ngannou, UFC heavyweight champion, wants to fight Tyson Fury, and with his determination, nothing is going to stop him from getting that fight. Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury expressed their interest in fighting each other in a potential crossover fight over the last weekend. Francis Ngannou stepped into the ring during the post-fight event of Tyson Fury's fight against Dillian Whyte, with Tyson Fury winning by knockout in the 6th round. However, if this fight must take place, the UFC has to agree to the fight and include it in the new deal with Francis Ngannou, and without this, Ngannou won't re-sign a deal with the UFC. Francis Ngannou fought the last fight of his contract with the UFC in January at UFC 270 main event. It was a successful title defense fight against Cyril Gane, and he's set to become a free agent in December, according to the UFC championship clause. He could wait till the clause expires and fight the Gypsy King on his own without the involvement of the UFC. However, he sees life in MMA afterward and considers the UFC the right place to continue fighting, but only under one condition. During an interview on the MMA Hour on Monday, Ngannou said, "The Tyson Fury fight has to be part of the discussion. That's not an option. It has to be part of the discussion, because if that's not part of the discussion, it will never be. If I sign another contract now, basically the same model of the contract, I'm screwed. That's not happening ever. So we have to figure out a way to implement this into a contract." He further added, "I think the UFC is a good promotion and I want to keep fighting. The Tyson Fury is not my last fight. I want to keep fighting. After Tyson Fury, there's still a lot of fights. There's the Jon Jones, there's the Stipe trilogy." He also revealed that there's not been so much progress with the UFC on signing that contract. Even though they've had meetings a couple of times since his last fight, none has been about the new deal, but just about clearing the air, as he described it. He said, "I was speaking about my frustration, but also I had to go back home because it's not a thing that's supposed to be solved in one night or over 1 or 2 dinners. It might take some time. I went home and saw my family and came back and had the surgery. As far as business, we haven't really moved on. I think just now what they're trying to do is clear the air." Francis Ngannou is currently recovering from his recent knee surgery, which could keep him out till 2023. That gives his team and UFC officials plenty of time to try and hash out a new deal. Perhaps they will come to his terms. A crossover fight between two champions in the combat sports world would of course be a massive one. Would you like to see this fight happen? And do you think the UFC would ever agree with Francis Ngannou's terms? Leave your comments in the comments section. Gilbert Burns is skeptical about a potential Colby Covington versus Khamzat Chimaev fight and says he doesn't think Colby will accept. UFC President Dana White proposed earlier in the month that Khamzat Chimaev will be facing Colby Covington next, but Gilbert Burns doubts if the fight will ever happen because he thinks Colby Covington will not accept the fight. That's a tough fight, but first things first. Colby has to accept the fight, and I don't think he will. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling he won't accept the fight. That's the feeling that I have, he told MMA Junkie. The UFC welterweight contender and former title challenger Gilbert Burns, who lost to Chimaev at UFC 273, does not expect Covington to accept to fight Chimaev and that Chimaev will have to consider fighting another opponent instead. He said, "I think it will be a very tough fight, a very, very close fight, but I just don't think he'll say yes. I just don't think. Maybe Bilal is there and they make Bilal versus Khamzat. I said I'll be ready for a rematch, so we'll see. I want big fights, that's what I'm looking for next. But I don't think Colby will fight Khamzat." He further explained that Colby Covington has been selective with the opponents he fights and tends to choose only favorable matchups. His last 3 fights since 2019 were against opponents coming off a streak of losses: Jorge Masvidal, Tyron Woodley, and Robbie Lawler. He said, Because lately, he's just getting the fights against guys that are coming off a loss and he picks and chooses. I just don't think he will do it. I don't know. It's a feeling that I have. He's not taking this fight. Khamzat Chimaev remains undefeated in his MMA career and is one of the biggest fighters in UFC, so Burns states that the odds are in his favor. He said that even though the fight would be a tough one, Colby can't withstand all the punches from Chimaev and doesn't have the power in his hands to him. What are your opinions on this? Do you think that Colby Covington is an underdog in this fight and can't stand a chance against Chimaev? Comment below. Nick Diaz expresses frustration with UFC, says, "Quit slow rolling me please." Nick Diaz publicly expressed his frustration with the UFC recently in his tweet on Twitter. Diaz, who has just one fight left on his UFC contract, has made it clear that he wants to get over with that fight or be released. "I've been trying to fight everybody and no go, what's the holdup, UFC?" Diaz tweeted, "I'm not fighting Conor, he sucks. I'll fight someone, quit slow rolling me please. Thanks." He tweeted. This tweet indicated that UFC is looking into booking a trilogy between Conor McGregor and Nick Diaz, as it has been highly anticipated since their last two fights, where Diaz submitted Conor in the first and Conor won by majority decision in the second at UFC 196 and UFC 202 respectively. Nick Diaz isn't so interested in fighting Conor McGregor and has shown interest in a fight with Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier also reciprocated the interest, but the fight hasn't been booked by UFC for reasons they don't know, which apparently is causing Diaz's frustration. They both were originally scheduled to fight back in 2018, but the fight couldn't hold due to Poirier's injury during training camp, which forced him to withdraw. They have not met since then, and this seems like a perfect time to meet again, but it's not yet booked. Which of the fights do you anticipate? Nick Diaz versus McGregor? Or Nick Diaz versus Dustin Poirier? Leave your comments below. Daniel Cormier believes Nick Diaz will never fight again. "He looked like a different man," he said. It is rumored that Nick Diaz will step into the octagon again by the end of 2022, but the recent UFC analyst and former two-division champion Daniel Cormier thinks otherwise and concludes that Nick Diaz will not be able to fight again. Nick Diaz's return to the octagon at UFC 266 after being away for almost 7 years was not so eventful, as he ended up being knocked out by Robbie Lawler in the third round. He's said to have looked better in training than in the fight itself. Although Nick Diaz is one of the biggest names in the world of MMA with many feats to his name, Cormier thinks that the star fighter has become a shell of himself, obviously due to the lengthy layoff. During a recent episode of DC and RC, Cormier said, "My last visual of Nick Diaz, I don't feel like we're gonna really see him again in the octagon. The pictures, he looked shredded. Inside the octagon, he looked like a different man and it didn't seem like he wanted to be in there." What really is the future of Nick Diaz in fighting? Will he ever fight again? I want to know your opinions on Cormier's speculations. Make sure to leave your comments below. I'm sure you enjoyed this video, so do well to like this video and don't hesitate to subscribe to this channel if you are yet to. Also, make sure to hit the notification bell so you can be promptly notified when more videos like this one are uploaded. Goodbye and see you in the next video.